today, this event is only befitting for the New York Urban League and for the New York Urban League Young Professionals Joint Week as we have a discussion and unpacking how we can advance ourselves within our professional career. And by doing so, leverage relationships in that effort. We're joined today by individuals who are esteemed in their professional careers, but most importantly, um, they are one of you. They are young professionals, they are thriving, they are striving, they are networking, and they are cultivating relationships that have led them to the professional career they are in today. Um, Let me not be remiss, let me introduce myself. My name is Kendall Monk. I myself am a young professional, been a member of the New York Urban League for more than a year. I serve as Director of Education and Youth Development for the National Urban League, and I myself have had an opportunity and been given the chance to serve in a variety of different roles to support others, but most importantly, um, there have been those individuals before me that have been my mentor, my sponsor, my advocate. And so I understand how important it is to have individuals in your corner. Let's hear from the professionals that are really going to speak to their own experiences, and hopefully this conversation can help you take action after today within your own community circles and professional workplaces. Let me start. Let me ask first up, Alicia, if you just mind introducing yourself, your professional career, and your role today.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy, what's today? Thursday. Okay. My name is Alicia Williams. Or someone say doctor is there. It's important. So let me rephrase myself. I'm Dr. Alicia Williams, but please just call me Alicia. And so I work at Morgan Stanley. I oversee diversity and inclusion for their U.S. Banks business. And my past life was higher education. So again, I can speak to career change, and anyone you have questions, hit me up. And today I am the role of the sponsor, which is true in my everyday job. Is that's cool?
That's cool. And
right.
let me ask you, how do you show up in that role today in your daily professional career?
Absolutely. As a sponsor, so in my role as someone who oversees D&I efforts, so obviously diversity and inclusion, or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let me not assume that everyone knows the acronyms, but that's a popular phrase. So I've been in the D&I space for a few years now, first in higher education and now on Wall Street. And my space is I would say my role and my job is to make sure that I am using my voice and my seat at the table to actually make progress. So there are people in the room who are mentors, who are advocates, but in my role as a sponsor, I actually have kind of, I would say, buying power to where I can help make a decision on someone's promotion, on a professional development opportunity that someone gets. That's why it's important to have, I think my role, what makes my role unique in particular is some D&I roles report into HR. I actually report into the COO of my business. So I'm in all of the business conversations. So I'm actually able to kind of highly speak on behalf of people and make sure that representation is there. So a lot of people do reach out to me for mentorship or advocacy, but the true part of a sponsor is someone who can really make a difference in those rooms to decide what the next step is in that person's career trajectory. So I am that person, and for anyone who knows me, I'll always tell people I will never be the person in the room not speaking up on your behalf. So you do not have to worry about me being quiet, because that's not me. So that's how I show up every day.
Thank you. I think in short, you can say you're a champion behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Next, I want to ask to Lou, same question, if you can just introduce yourself, the role you represent today, and your professional career.
Awesome. Thank you, Kendall. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Great to see everyone today. My name is Tolu. I'm currently a product operations manager at Stripe. Prior to that, I was a program manager at Google, and prior to that, I was a account manager at Uber. I'm currently today representing the mentorship role. I think I currently still get more mentorship than I give, if I'm being quite honest. But in my role and at work, I'm actually still pretty new to my job. I'm currently only 6 months in, so I'm still getting a lot of mentorship from other people. But there are people who've since joined the team after I've joined. And as new joiners, as people just trying to figure it out, I've tried to be a mentor by giving people advice on what I've done so far, especially people who are new to the tech space or just new to fintech or the space you're working in general.
Amazing. Paying it forward regardless how new you may be. I think mentorship comes with all shapes and sizes. So thank you. Thank you. And then last but not least, for me, same thing. Your introduction, who you are, your role today, and your professional career, please.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Femi Fauye. I'm currently the global head of real estate finance and investing at a small company known as WeWork. Some of you may be familiar with it. I've been at WeWork for over 4 years, and so I've had a very interesting experience through that time. I've seen different phases of the organization, and so happy to talk about that journey and being a person of color in that environment as well, and how to thrive in a weather storm, but also come out on the other side. Majority of my career has been in commercial real estate in some shape or form, but WeWork was actually my first non-Wall Street job in my career. So I actually come from a Wall Street background in sales and trading, as well as investment banking. So I'll also talk about leaving the world of finance and moving over to, I guess, sector or industry, if you will, if that's of interest. My role this evening on this call is that of the advocate. So happy to talk about that perspective, and I do play that role now in my current day-to-day with our various talent all across the organization, in addition to some sponsorship as well as some mentorship. So, happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you. And can you just clarify for those in the room today, we don't want to assume what an advocate is. Can you give us an example of how you advocate for others in your work?
Sure. This is interesting because I think the advocate is almost a bit of a hybrid between the sponsor and a mentor, if you will, with elements of both. And so it's oftentimes confused, for either or. But what I find the advocate to be quite often is someone that may not be in your direct business line, may not necessarily be in your reporting unit, or even in, ultimately in your group, but they have an opportunity to speak on your behalf in rooms or environments in which you may not be there, but advocate for you and drop your name, or promote something great you've done, or elevate work product of yours in a subtle way that the sponsor could then take and come over the top and kind of slam dunk it home. And so to me, the advocate and the sponsor often work, like Kobe and Shaq. They work kind of hand in hand to help the success of a young professional.
Nice. I love the sports analogy. So you're one of the biggest cheerleaders on the court. Love it.
Absolutely.
Love it. So let's jump right in. You guys had an opportunity to share who you are and particular roles that we want to dive into. But let's talk about your own professional experience. And this is an open question to any one of you. But really, how much would you stress the importance within your career to connect with a mentor, a sponsor, and/or an advocate? Anyone can feel free to go first.
Well, I will say ladies first right now. So I tell people I won't go down the rabbit hole, but my career journey is very unique. As I mentioned, I was in higher education for probably over 10 years plus. I actually worked at Cornell when MBA School Johnson, when Femi was there, but I was in the alumni affairs side, and I lived in China for a couple of years after that. and decided I wanted to transition into corporate and Wall Street. And if it wasn't for the mentorship that I got, I actually, it's funny because I actually reached back out to that person today. This helped inspire that. But I had a mentor who didn't just give me pep talks. We had, and I found her on LinkedIn. It wasn't someone who I knew. It was just me being active on LinkedIn and reaching out to someone whose career aligned with where I wanted to go at that time and asking her if we could have a conversation. It doesn't always work out, but you might as well just, throw the shot up and see if it falls. We ended up connecting, and the advice that she gave me was invaluable. I mean, we had very transparent conversations about personal life. For every interview that I had, her and I sat on the phone and prepped. We went over questions. She helped me get over, stop rambling in your interviews, get to the point, what to focus on. We went over my resume a few times. She even after we, I kind of got to a good point, she would send me messages, hey, you should change your LinkedIn profile to this. So I think that as we talk about, and of course, I'm the D&I person to bring it up, but allyship is a big word. And we talked about people being active allies and accomplices. And I think that goes for a true mentor as well. That people like to say that they have mentees or that they're mentors, but what makes a person a really good mentor, and I think that was my case, was she gave me actionable items, and she said what made me a good mentee was that I actually followed suit with those actionable items. And so now I was able to make that jump from higher education to Wall Street. My first role was actually recruiting at JP Morgan Chase, and she helped me basically tell my story better. And if it wasn't for her, I don't think I'd be where I am today in my career. And I actually reconnected with her and said, you know what, actually now I'm at a point where I want to pay you for your services and ask you to be an executive coach, because she was that invaluable to getting me to where I am.
Amazing. Connections just that small can be so impactful over time. Let me ask our other two panelists, Tolu, how about you?
I don't know if I can say much more to that in terms of mentorship. I would say two things in my experience, or two quotes that stick with me, and then maybe talk about how it's applied. One is that you should always make sure what you do is the product of your own conclusion. People have opinions, people have their life experiences, and people have what they think is best. But at the day, you have to live with the consequences of your actions. So you always want to make sure you rationalize and come to your own conclusion. But two, which seems a bit contradictory, but the second quote is that you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So you have to make certain decisions, but the reality is your perspective can seldom be complete when you are yourself in that situation. I rely on people today. Some are my age, some are my friends, someone actually I met on LinkedIn as well through it was an event, and I reached out to the person afterwards. I met someone through a program I was part of, and I just laid out all to them and say, this is the situation I'm going through. What do you think? And I feel like, to me, it's almost like you have a canvas and you're building out the painting with other people's perspective, and then you can see it from a few vantage points and decide what you think makes the most sense for you. So maybe to use an example, one of the earliest mentors I've had was when I was in college. I started college thinking I'd be pre-med, called the orgo, the math, and a lot of these pre-med courses. And I actually went to do an internship at Yale's med school. Phenomenal internship, great people. The dean of the college was a Black individual, and that was very inspirational to me. But I went into the hospitals and I looked, and I thought, man, I don't like this. And I can't see myself doing this for even a year, quite honestly. I looked at it and I thought the idea was cool, the prestige was cool, the money would be great, but I didn't have the passion in me. So I reached out to a mentor I'd had through a program called Fortis that I did in college. And I basically told him, hey, man, I've taken, was it 2 years of pre-med courses at this point, but I'm not trying to be a doctor. And I'm kind of feel like, man, am I stuck in this route because I don't really know anything else? I haven't had support in other regards. And we ended up having long chats talking about my interests and such. And ultimately, he actually connected me with a friend of his who he actually went to Cornell with. This guy went to Cornell, funny enough. And he also was actually an entrepreneur in residence for a little bit. But he went to Cornell and he said, I'll connect you with someone I went to school with. and he can give you some advice. He actually started his own business. Perhaps you can connect with him and chat. End up chatting with the guy, and things went so well. I actually ended up spending a summer in India shadowing this guy who was a CEO of a restaurant chain, literally following him around day after day, asking him a question like, why did you make that decision? And, you know, why are you choosing to do this? And why is that the best way to go? And that was the first exposure I had to anything that wasn't medicine. It was for me, it was like an immersion of, I'm living with this guy. I'm going to the restaurant, eating the restaurant's food. I'm meeting with the people he's meeting with. I'm seeing how he's making decisions. And that for me was the first time I said, yeah, I can see myself doing this, because now I see people doing something different in a way that I can enjoy it if I was at the table. So that was a moment where mentorship kind of broke me out of what I thought was a restriction of staying in medicine, because I'd spent these years taking medical courses, and I thought that was the only path for me.
Amazing. Another inspiring story where a simple connection has made a career impact. And Femi, let me ask you the same thing, same question. How important in your career? How important was it for you to have a similar experience with someone in one of these roles?
Sure. I'm going to talk about sponsorship. And it's interesting because quite often the best sponsorship is silent. You'll never know they exist, right? They're almost like a guiding hand in the background, in which you never know that they're speaking on your behalf, but you can see their fruits of the labor. Now, in certain circumstances, you may have a really good sponsor, which you have a rapport with, and you may know that they're doing it, but it doesn't always happen that way, which I'm not saying is better or worse. I'm just saying that there are two paths to sponsorship and how sponsorship plays out. I'll speak on it from my own perspective. When I was early in my career at WeWork, and this was maybe about 6 to 9 months into the role, I got a call from my boss. And he said, really, really great. You've been doing a good job. I thought I was getting fired. He said, we're not firing you. In fact, we want to have you go build out our North America team. And I was like, wow, interesting, great responsibility. And so they tapped me to build out the North America real estate underwriting team, which spanned North America and Israel as well. I could talk to you about why Israel was lumped with North America over some beers at a later date. In any event, one question I asked, I was like, why me? My boss was like, you've been doing a really good job. I think it's a really good opportunity. And that's where it ended the conversation. It wasn't subsequently a few weeks later, I was, talking to a coworker, and they were like, hey, just so you know, you got that promotion because the head of legal has been really impressed with you. And when they were having a conversation around restructuring the team, they said you would be absolutely crazy not to have Femi in that role. And I was really blown away because I think I had a fairly good rapport with the person on a personal level. I think I had a good rapport with them on a professional level, but I would have never thought in a million years that they would have been a sponsor speaking up in rooms on my behalf, to the point of making sure that I was moved into a leadership position, at WeWork at the time. And so that goes to the power of sponsorship. It goes to the power of what I think is always showing up as your best self, and no matter what the circumstances, because you don't know who's watching, you don't know who's impressed by you. You also don't know who you may be disappointing when you're not your best self, right? And so always putting your best foot forward with your work product. And ultimately when I found out, I said, thank you. I went to the person and I thanked them, for that sponsorship. They didn't have to do it. But from there, I took it on me to ensure that I didn't embarrass them, for them sponsoring me in that room. And so, I made sure that I was bringing 110%, 120% of my A game at all times, to confirm that, by them sponsoring me and advocating on my behalf, that they were doing a good thing, right? And that they would continue to do it for others in the future, because they wouldn't feel burned by sponsoring somebody and then being embarrassed. And so all that to say that, sponsorship, I wouldn't be where I am today in my professional career if it wasn't for sponsorship. And so just be mindful, you never know who your sponsors are. And there may be people who look like you, or maybe people who look completely different backgrounds. So to be open to those conversations and those relationships, and then when you identify them, nurture them and cultivate them, because they can be invaluable to your career.
Wow, I'm blown away. Such incredible stories, incredible key moments that has led to real opportunity growth within your profession. I just got hats off to say, I'm personally wild, and I'm congratulating you all on your success so far. But let's get back to our audience. Potentially, you know, we have current members, but I know we welcomed a lot of new members, potentially young people who may be coming out of school, looking for that first real opportunity, or might have already obtained it, and they're building relationships in the workplace, meeting new people, working with their colleagues. You know, after hearing your stories today, they might take it upon themselves to seek out a mentor, to seek out a sponsor, to seek out an advocate. But this might really be the first time that they are intentionally looking to build those relationships. You know, if you can give real quick in 1 minute, like your best recommendations on how to really connect with people and foster these relationships, what would it be? Let me start with you, Alicia. What words of advice do you have for the folks in the room today?
I would say the first thing is identifying who the sponsors are at your organization. So those people could be obviously C-suite executives, but they can also be D&I professionals. I say that because when I started, I've been at Morgan Stanley for about a year and some change. And when I started, a number of people just reached out to say hello, and they just wanted to put time on my calendar just so I know who they are. And those people stand out in my mind. So when someone comes to me and says, hey, I need recommendations for co-chairs, or hey, we have this program like the McKinsey Accelerator program that you see everyone in, like I'm placing people in those programs. And the first people who come to my mind are those who just put time on my calendar. They send me a note. Hey, I just want to put some time on your calendar and connect. You can find a connection. You can look these people up. Maybe they went to your same alma mater. Maybe they're from your hometown, or maybe you have nothing in common. And then I would say go into those conversations with an agenda. It doesn't have to be long. It could be a 20-minute conversation, and being mindful of the person's time, and just tell them about your career journey at your company. Give them some personal facts to kind of humanize the conversation. And if it goes well, some of those people, you can ask them, hey, is it okay if we have these quarterly? Not only in a way are you getting that mentorship and advocacy as well, but if it's the right person, your name will always be top of mind. And the last thing I'll say, what's important about a sponsor is also tell them about your work product. So maybe tell them, hey, I just got finished doing this thing on my team, and I put together this presentation, or I did this, because they also may need that ammunition if they're sponsoring it. Because people will ask me, okay, this person sounds great. Alicia, why are you recommending them? Why are you advocating for them? Or why are you placing them there? And if I can also tell something to your work product as to why you should be promoted, why you should be in this program outside of just because I think you're a great person, that's just something good to do. So keep your sponsors up to date what's in your brand book, as well as identifying them, and then just putting time on your calendar. I don't care how shy you think you are, 15, 20 minutes can change your career.
I think that's great. That's great. Tolu, what do you think? Do you have anything that you want to add and share with the audience?
Certainly. I think keep an open mind and be creative about how you go about your search. I found that you may think somebody is perfect. Maybe you've seen them as a sponsor to someone else or a mentor to someone else, and for some reason you reach out and they're just not willing to mentor you, or it's just not a fit. And sometimes it may seem the reverse and it works out. When I started at Google, which was a few years ago, I applied for a few formal mentorship programs. They had mentorship where you can say, I want some. I think I probably did 3 of them. One was through the Black ERG, one was through a mentorship program, and one was through, they call it a SAGE program with people who are more experienced. And all 3 people I got were terrible. I mean, not to speak poorly about people, but they just weren't a good fit. Some never showed up to the meetings we had. Some just never responded to my outreach. And at first I was discouraged. I truly know the value of mentorship and I wanted it. And ultimately, I don't remember why this came to mind, but maybe someone emailed me by mistake. I don't remember what the situation was, but I was looking through the company and seeing how many other people have the name Tolu, and there were only 3 other people. I mean, Tolu's not just joined the company. I even made a joke about it. I wanted to get this email alias, but you already stole it, so I just wanted to reach out and chat. And I remember all 3 of them. I thought one would be a great mentor, kind of gave me some advice, never spoke to me again. And one was just very happy, very cheerful, very willing to help. And to this day, I still meet with them. Has given me phenomenal advice. I've called them on a weekend when things have gone crazy, or when I had an offer on the table and trying to figure out how to take it. And the only point of connection we had initially was just he had the same name. He had no reason to be a mentor. He didn't know me, didn't know anything about me, but he was just willing to. And it's been a great relationship. So, I mean, you could try that and it could work or not work, but it was just weird to me that that was the way I ended up getting a mentor when I tried these 3 formal processes and nothing came out of it. So I think from that, I just taken that you just don't know sometimes how things are going to work out. Somebody may just see you and you remind them of your younger self, or there's just something that clicks between the 2 of you and they're willing to do it. So I'd say the formal processes aren't working. Try to be creative, keep open mind, and hopefully you can form a connection with someone that's genuine and that they're willing to invest in just as much as you are.
Yeah, I think we can.
I just say I'm jealous. I can't do that. My name's Tiffany.
That's 100 conversations you need to.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that people are a wow factor, and we never really know how our relationship is going to go. Femi, do you have any last remarks around this point?
Sure. I think what's often lost in this conversation and network, sorry, I don't say what's often lost. I think what's often overlooked is often the point around the human factor, and Tolu talked about it, but also just the importance of building relationship, and especially with mentors, advocates, and sponsors, making sure that you're not viewed as a vacuum where you're just sucking out of them. You're constantly asking for stuff and you're never giving anything back into the relationship. Now, I understand if you're trying to, acquire a sponsor who's the CEO of your business line, you're probably asking yourself, what can I offer them that they don't have already, that they're not getting from a billion people, on their team? However, what you can offer is being a normal person, right? Having casual conversation. They may be tired of talking about whatever it is about the business 24/7. They may want to hear, about your personal life. You may want to connect with them about something that's interesting. They may want to hear about something that they don't know about, something about your personal life that excites them or that sparks a thought in them about something that they went through when they were younger. And so don't take that for granted, and don't not consider that as something you are giving into the relationship. But also on a professional front, people are busy, right? And people are always looking for people that are eager and willing to help out and take on other things. And so there perhaps is an opportunity for you to help someone out in a different division in your business line, even being junior in your career, where you could make their life easier and offer up those opportunities, right? Ask, that opportunity to help. And if you can't ask, maybe you can find the opportunity and say, hey, I heard through the water cooler talk or this day, the Zoom chat, that you were looking for XYZ information. Actually, I have that information and I want to share it with you to help you, to help solve whatever issue you're looking for. It happens in a myriad of ways, but all that to say is make sure that in these relationships that they're a two-way street, to the extent possible, and make sure that you're giving into it as much as you're taking out. Because I can tell you that the thing that discourages me the most when mentoring and serving as an advocate for junior talent in my company is when I constantly feel like it's always an ask, right? They're constantly coming for something. More importantly, when it's always an ask based on a crisis, right? It's always they're dealing with some, existential crisis. Something has gone wrong with their manager. They're about to get fired. They got a bad review, and then they're calling me. And I always say, like, sometimes I just hear how you doing. Just call me and ask me what's up. Let's talk, right? Like, I'm a lot more receptive to those conversations than always having to put out the fire. So all that to say, remember the human aspect of all this, and people often want to be connected with on a human level. So do not underestimate that.
I think I heard through all your sharing, really genuinely wanting to connect with people, taking the initiative, knowing the room, taking stock of different individuals and how you think that they might be able to support you in your growth, but really building real relationships. I'm seeing some questions come through. here in the chat from our audience. Open question to anyone on the panel. Really speaking to, identifying that person to support you. How do you find commonalities between someone that you feel is a potential fit to play the role as their sponsor, your mentor, your advocate? Especially when you think that there are some clear differences. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, just to kick things off, I feel like, and maybe my approach is not what's ideal for everyone. Everyone has their approach, but I like to just go in and as much as I can, not, I guess, maybe start off with crisis, as Femi was saying, but lay out the situation as honestly as I can to give the people a sense of what I'm working with. Hey, listen, I have these fears, I have these concerns. I'm good here, I'm bad here. Here's what I'm hoping to accomplish. Maybe that will change whatsoever. And some people would just look at you and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't know anything about that. Or they may point you to somebody else and say, hey, maybe talk to this guy, talk to this person. They know more in that area. So I feel like talking about the human elements, trying to connect with people genuinely and be honest, and to me, at least a bit upfront about what I got going on. So I want somebody to commit to being a mentor and then tell them, actually, I was about to get fired. That's why I reached out to you. They may feel like it's it's a lot to handle. So I think being genuine, but also giving the person, at least I try to approach, giving the person the option to say no in a way they don't feel like it's they're doing you a disservice. I don't try to put the person in a position where I'm trying to corner them. It's not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to get them to say yes any way possible. I'm just putting myself out there and letting them know what I think I need. And if they volunteer to be in that role, then I would love to take it, or if they can point me to the right direction. So for me, I feel like one is just being open and honest, but two, also leaving it very open-ended, at least in the ask, so that someone doesn't feel like if they say no to me, man, they're really letting me down because I'm trying to tell them I really need them right now.
All right. We have a direct response from the audience in the chat. And then maybe you could speak a little bit more to this, to Lou. Are there different approaches depending on the professional space? There's one thing if you're in a corporate setting, but what if you're in a non-corporate setting, whether it be nonprofit, civil service job, what would you say to those individuals? And it doesn't have to be Toulouse, it could be anyone on the panel, Lisa, Femi. What would you have to say to people in varying fields?
That's an excellent question. I have to believe that being human, transcends all sectors and all lines of professional work. And so I think whether it be a corporate sphere, and I get the lens and the tone of this conversation probably lends itself to more of a corporate conversation, but I have to imagine a nonprofit, higher education, or other areas that if you're seeking out sponsors, mentors, and advocates, that at the end of the day, you're still building human connection and human relationship. And so the same skills and the same points that we're making here in the corporate world apply in other sectors as well. Of course, there's some nuances, but I believe that it still comes down to making human connection, getting buy-in on a personal level, and then having those persons help you in some shape or form, whether that be as a sponsor, advocate, or mentor. I think what's most important here is really, I think, Kendall, you spoke on, is reading the room, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really a key thing here, in that no matter what the environment is, you have to read the room. You have to understand the nonverbal social cues of the space in which you are trying to navigate and operate accordingly. And so going in, perhaps being in a nonprofit space and taking a corporate approach to something isn't going to get you the best outcome. So tell your approach to the environment that you're in, read the room, but again, still employ the principle of building human connection, being purpose-driven and out of the relationship, as Alicia mentioned, having an agenda when you have the conversation, that should apply across all spaces.
Nice.
And I want to add to that I tell people this in interviews. The hardest job I've ever had in my life was being a high school head track coach. in my life. Like I was by myself, 40 girls, inner city Baltimore, everything you could think of. And it was a team that was accustomed to winning. I mean, I remember crying sometimes. I remember having the hustle. And I would make, on top of what made it hard, was I was so blown away by the politics that was in high school coaching. So politics, to Femi's point, are everywhere. And it actually was frustrating for me to see it so much in coaching children to higher education. I think, and one of the most frustrating times I've had in higher ed was working at Harvard, which has this prestige. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but some of these kids are going through, which is different than other institutions that people don't think about. So I say that to say, again, the same advice can be applied to every industry, because the same struggles are there. And I can tell you, in higher education, sometimes the faculty will be worse than a C-suite level executive that you will meet in corporate America, still to this day. And I experienced that myself, because when I got to JP Morgan and I was in recruiting, I was surprised how easy it was for me to be mean sometimes in dealing with MDs who are making probably 4 times my salary, because in higher education, you deal with a lot. And in education in general, you deal with a lot. So don't count yourself out, and don't count out your ability to find a sponsor or a mentor. Definitely don't think it only applies to corporate. I think still that humanizing commonalities. I tell people, whether you're trying to get a referral, which worked for me, I said, find those connections where I know people will always at least listen. So for me, that's my sorority. I went to Howard. Like, we have amazing school pride. That's Baltimore. Like, people from Baltimore, like, oh my gosh, you're from Baltimore. So like, I'm like, all right, so let me find the Baltimoreans, the AKAs, the Howard grads. Okay, the Trojans, like people who I know that pride is there. They're going to listen. They won't give me 15 minutes. They're going to answer an email. And I'll tell you a funny story. That's not my story. It's my husband's story. He wanted to be in the NBA really bad. And he was in sports. I forgot who he was working for at that time. He cold emails. If you know Mark Tatum, deputy commissioner of the NBA, second in command, but they're fraternity brothers. He sent him a cold email on LinkedIn, or like a cold email somewhere, and he responded. And it was that fraternity connection, because some of those things are really important. So again, find your connections. Again, it could be your hometown. For me in Baltimore, it's my high school, and you can find those. And if the pleasantries of your conversations are reminiscing just to let the person's guard down, that's fine. But you can find connections any which way, every kind of way, and know that sometimes people aren't going to be receptive to the connections, but it doesn't hurt to try to at least break the ice. And that is industry wide, whether you are a coach or whether you are a global head at WeWork. Like, people are still people everywhere.
I definitely agree, regardless of the space. If you can find a real personal connection, whether it be an interest or in other identities, I think that can help really kickstart a relationship, and sharing between both of your experiences to help shape kind of your trajectory in terms of your career goals. Let's move from being space specific to role specific. A question came up in the chat. Sometimes, especially if you're a younger or new professional in your career breaking through, you sometimes assume like your direct manager or supervisor may be willing to play these roles, right? It's kind of an assumed thought. Let me ask you, is that always the case in your professional opinion? And how do you manage those relationships to get the most out of receiving support from your supervisor in terms of them pushing your professional growth?
I'm happy to kick this one off. So it's an interesting question, and it's a good one, because I'm a people manager right now, and as you were talking, I was thinking about it. Am I their mentor, sponsor, or advocate? What I will say is that I do think that the beauty in building network and community in a given space, again, no matter what the space is really expanding sort of that reach. And so I think it's probably helpful if your manager, direct manager, isn't playing these roles for you, because then you get kind of siloed. And let's say something happens to your manager for whatever reason, they decide to move on, or they get eliminated, the role gets eliminated, then you're kind of without that. However, if you kind of spread your mentorship here, your advocate there, your sponsorship, over there, now across the various across the organization, you kind of have your name, and you kind of have a connection point to individuals that can help you. And also, I think with the manager sort of serving in these roles, it can be tough because they're also the person that may be setting your pay, or maybe setting, your promotion cycle, and you may be reluctant to ask the dumb question, or you may be reluctant to express frustration, or you may be reluctant to show up as your complete self because you fear that it will have a negative impact on your professional growth. And so I do think decoupling those things and having someone else serve as those sounding boards is, I think, healthy, and also I think it's advisable on a host of fronts. And I think it probably can keep you out of some sticky situations. If you wanted to vent about how bad your manager is, all right, you need a mentor. You can't do it to your manager if that's your mentor. So I think it's kind of spreading it out is probably wise, just for your own sanity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, no pressure.
A small comment, and honestly, I've never managed anyone. I hope that the day comes soon, but I struggle with this, just being quite honest. I've had a few managers. Some have been phenomenal, some have been okay, some have not been great. And early on, and to this day still, what Femi said resonated with me, where I go in and I have the assumption that if I succeed, my manager succeeds. If I get promoted, it looks good for them because they've been able to promote somebody. And in some cases that is true, but I've also found in some cases they may just be trying to get more headcount, or they may try to make sure that they don't go above a certain budget, or so forth and so on. They may have other goals. They may themselves be trying to get promoted or move to a different part of the organization. So I'm not top of mind for them. And I guess I have to discover and learn that the hard way. So I guess now I try to make sure I don't just have a relationship with my direct manager, but that person's manager and that person's manager, if possible. So I have a sense not just of what matters to the person I'm reporting to, but what matters to the person they're reporting to. One of the best advice I've ever gotten is that part of your job is to make your manager's life easier. Every time I meet with my manager, I'm always like, hey, let me know if there's anything else I can do to support you. Or if he tells me I'm working on this, I'm like, oh, well, I'm really good at that, for example. I'm really good at making presentations. Do you need a presentation for that? Or do you need this for that? And I find, at least, once again, I'm not great at this, so this is just an approach I've been taking. Part of trying to get some mentorship, trying to get some advocacy and sponsorship is alleviating what may be stressing my manager, or what they may be thinking about other than that. And also showing them that if they give me the opportunity, it's going to work out. So making sure that they're getting good feedback from other people that I work with as well. So essentially just putting them in a position that if they do make a decision, one, they have the time, they have the comfort, they have the aligned goals to support me, but also if they do so, they have the confidence that they're going to get support from the people above them and their peers as well. So yeah, I think my approach has been that. Still learning the process, and I hope that it gets better, but that's been my approach. You just make sure that you're helping your manager out as much as you can so that they can help you as much as they can.
Let me, there was a question that came up in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry, can I add to that really quickly? You just made me think of, I'd like to say, or what I think Tolu's describing, I like to call it managing up. And that's a term that a lot of people have heard. And I think what comes to your manager is kind of reading the room with your manager as well. So sometimes you may have a great manager who can be, a mentor, advocate, sponsor, somewhere you just get this vibe and you know that if I leave this company, this is a person I can stay in contact with. You have that relationship. I unfortunately have had some managers, unfortunately, look like me, and more times than not, they look like me, where something kind of feels off, where you feel as if you don't know if you can trust them. And that's why it's important to find that advocate or sponsor in your organization, so that if your manager you get a bad vibe about and they're throwing dirt on your name, that someone else is there who can say, to where I always say, you want to make it so that other people in the room don't believe whatever the person is saying. So you have your sponsor, you have your mentor, and they can still be in the company. You should have someone in the company and someone externally. But if you know that your manager relationship isn't well, all the more reason why it's important to find someone else at the company who you trust. And you don't have to vent to them about your manager, but just to get advice that you may not be getting from your manager. If you're not finding that finding that within your company, then you just have to find your other ways to perfect your craft outside of bouncing and saying this just isn't the place for me. So that's asking, maybe you have to do your own research on conferences that you can attend and asking your manager if that's something the company will cover, or signing up for those professional development classes, making sure your manager is aware of your goals, that your manager knows, hey, I want to manage people one day, or hey, I want to get more experience with Excels or PowerPoints, or hey, I want to do this. You have to communicate those things and then read the room from there. Is your manager helping you or aren't they helping you? And that's all a part of that managing up piece.
Listening to you all speak, everyone speak around this, I think that, it's been great advice, especially if it's been very specific to a particular job or particular industry. And Alicia, you made a good point about, making considerations for yourself about, whether this is the place here or maybe you need to look outside. And it reminds me of the point Tolu made earlier, when you're in the picture, you can't see the whole frame. And so a question came up about, mentorship. And I'm going to change their question to ask, what would you tell everyone here, and maybe even to your younger self in your earlier professional days, around good advice looking forward, around determining a mentor outside of your current circumstances or your current company? How can that be a benefit to you long term?
So the question was getting a mentor outside of your company?
Yeah, why do you believe that maybe that could potentially be a benefit? Because we talked around finding individuals within the company, right? But we sometimes, we may not be at a company forever. And so what are some benefits of building relationships with other individuals that can support you in your growth outside of your current company? And how can that impact long-term growth in your professional career?
Got it. I think the quick thing for me is if they're outside of your company, you can share more, you can go deeper without the fear of, is it getting back to someone who, who's an ally with who, and you can just be more honest about where you want to go, what you want to do, what you're not getting. And then I think it has the long-term career because that person gets added in your professional network. So it's important to build a network in whatever industry that you're in outside of your company. Everyone in your network should not work for your own organization. And so whether that is you have to join YP or organizations like this to meet new people outside of your company who may be in other industries or maybe in the same one, but it just expands your network. You can learn something from everyone, good or bad. And again, it just allows you to really have an authentic conversation without the fear of who's going to find out from my end.
Femi, what about you? Oh, I'm sorry. Tolu, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe another quote. I like quotes. I hope you forgive me from using them. But I think it's a matter of what you give is what you get. And the more you can trust the person you're talking to, then the more you can give and the more you can get. I had a situation, just by example, where I was at a consulting company and I didn't like my manager. I thought she didn't, I guess, get my experience where I was coming from. She was very much a micromanager. And I didn't want to stay at the company, but I really liked my manager's manager. She was kind of the exact opposite. She's a great mentor. Hey, this is how I was maybe a few months in, she was saying, hey, you have great potential. Let me introduce you to this person, go this route. And at a moment I thought, I don't know that I want to stay here. My direct manager is not great, but her manager is phenomenal. And what made it even more difficult was my skip level, like as my manager's manager, had been my manager's mentor for about 5 years. She's been her mentor for 5 years of being at the company. So I started to think, if I go to my skip level manager and say, I have these issues, is she really gonna believe me? Is she going to take my side when she's been mentoring this person for 5 years? So it was something that stuck with me for a while. And I spoke with someone outside the company because I figured, this issue is wrapped up in it. And he said to me, the issue you're actually facing is the most common reason people leave companies, they leave their manager. So you should actually say something because it will be a good experience for you. This might be the second job I had. I was still pretty young. And this person I thought had my interest at heart, was a great mentor. By the time I said, no, I'm not going to listen to that advice. I'm just going to leave the company because I don't want to have this tough conversation. And thankfully, I got another job, a job I was very excited about. Now, as I was leaving, I told my skip level manager, and it's the person leading the project, and they said to me, wow, totally, we're shocked to me. You're doing phenomenal work here. We thought, fast track promotion and such. Why are you leaving? And at first I kind of said, just different opportunity. They kept on pushing me. Ultimately, I said, hey, I had some differences with my manager, and I didn't think this would be a good thing long term. And they were shocked. They said to me, we actually know that she has these issues as a manager. We've been working on getting her some development work and how she can be better. We wish you had said something sooner, and we would have found a way to make this work, even if we had to give you another manager. And that caught me in a moment where I'd already accepted the other offer. I'd already kind of committed. And I really went back and I said, damn, I wish I'd listened to this mentor because he had some years of experience. I guess he had an insight or a perspective that I just wasn't willing to trust, because to some extent I thought, you're not in the situation. You don't know how tough it is. You don't know how to be every day. But ever since that day, I've valued people being able to have an outside perspective, because it gives me a sense of comfort in someone being a bit more objective. Someone is seen in this situation, they may be trying to protect the company, they may be trying to protect their own reputation, they may be trying to protect their own mentee because they want that person to succeed. But when someone's removed from it, then you can have a high level of trust in their intent and why they're giving you that feedback. So from that day, when I get feedback outside of the situation, I try to take it in and I try to really say, let me give it my best effort to implement this. So for me, it's invaluable because it's just a matter of trust and being willing to give the person the benefit of the doubt, because they're looking at it from a lens that's a bit removed from what you're seeing day to day.
Great. And Femi, do you have any last remarks?
I'll say last but not least, and I know we need to wrap up, but I would say you never know who knows who, right? And so you don't know if you may find a mentor in a different industry, totally different career path, different walk of life. It's healthy because you don't know who their best friend is. You don't know who their fraternity brother or sorority sister is. You don't know who their mother-in-law is, their neighbor is, right? And so again, you're all about spreading your network and sort of getting your personal tentacles out into the world, into the atmosphere, and building a good network and building good vibes, and doing that siloed into your industry or siloed into whatever your practice is just bad form, right? And so, get out there. Mentors of all walks of life can be helpful, whether they give you a new perspective, whether they're able to connect you to somebody else, that you didn't know that they knew, or whether they're just able to be a ear that can listen and not talk to you and not try to get. Sometimes a good mentor doesn't necessarily give you the advice. They just listen and help clarify your thoughts. And at the end, you realize you may have known the answer, or you may have known how to navigate it. You just needed someone that was objective to listen and not necessarily try to impart their view on it. And that's also a great mentor. So having someone from a different path and a different viewpoint is as valuable as having someone that's in your industry or in your career path that you think that can help you.
Thank you. This was an incredible conversation. Hearing all of your personal stories about your professional advancements, I think if anything, what I heard is I heard that building relationships is key, reading the room is significant. It leads to both personal and professional growth, but more importantly, you never know the impact of these relationships, short term, long term, regardless if it's within the company or outside. Networking is key and never stop.